Billionaire family mocked the black woman at a party minutes later. She erased their $4 9B deal. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Who the hell let you in here? The words didn't just cut through the ballroom, they detonated. Sharp, public, designed to draw blood. The woman who hurled them stood in a blazing red gown that clung to her like armor, diamonds scattered across her neck in cold, glittering constellations. Her laughter high, metallic, cruel ricocheted off the chandeliers as she jabbed a manicured finger toward the black woman standing calmly across from her. Guests turned instantly, the way predators snap toward the smell of a wound. The gala was a monument to excess. Gold-trimmed walls, marble floors polished into a mirror, string quartet curving notes through the air. Everywhere you looked, wealth gleamed, but the ugliest thing in the room was the arrogance in that woman's smile. Beside her, a silver-haired man in a flawless tuxedo threw his head back, laughing as if the insult were the funniest thing Head ever heard. His fingers tightened around a crystal wine glass, a smear of burgundy swirling like a taunt. He didn't even bother to hide how deeply he enjoyed the spectacle. But the black woman they mocked, she didn't flinch. She stood tall in a pristine white gown, the kind of simple elegance that whispered instead of screamed. No diamonds, no ornamentation, just poise, carved into silence. Her skin caught the amber light, her expression unreadable, her eyes steady as a horizon before a storm. To her right, her partner, a man in a midnight blue tuxedo, hovered a half-step behind her. His jaw clenched, shoulders locked, every muscle screaming to intervene, but he knew better. He knew this woman didn't need rescuing. Her stillness was the warning. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. The woman in red leaned in, voice sugary and venomous at the same time. Oh, don't look at me like that. People like you don't get invited to rooms like this. Someone must have made a clerical error. A few guests gasped, delighted. Others hid smirks behind champagne flutes. Phones lifted, lenses gleaming like hungry eyes. Because in places like this, humiliation isn't just entertainment, it's sport. But the target of their cruelty? She didn't breathe faster, didn't shift, didn't lower her gaze. She simply tilted her head the slightest degree, as if studying an insect crawling across her shoe. That made the woman in red furious. Look at you, she pressed on, savoring the moment. Standing here like you belong. Who exactly do you think you are? The quartet hesitated mid-note. Something in the room strained, a thin crack forming beneath the chandeliers. The black woman's fingers brushed the side of her gown, straightening a non-existent wrinkle. Her voice, when it came, was calm enough to shake the floor. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was a sentence weighted with a gravity the rest of the room felt before they understood. The man in the tuxedo beside the red-gowned woman snorted. Please, he scoffed. Rooms like this weren't built for you. A hush followed, not silence, but anticipation. The kind that settles right before lightning tears open the sky. The black woman looked around the ballroom at the velvet drapes, the caviar towers, the chandelier halos, at the people who stared at her like she was an intruder, a mistake, a joke. Her eyes returned to the woman in red, and she smiled. Not a warm smile, not a polite one. A small, precise, devastating curve of the lips, the kind born from knowing something the room does not. The kind of smile that means everything is about to change. Across the ballroom, someone whispered, "What's happening?" No one answered, because beneath the swirl of champagne and violin strings, the atmosphere had shifted, a pressure building subtle, cold, impossible to ignore. It was the kind of tension that only appears when the person being humiliated isn't the victim, but the storm. And the first flash of lightning was about to strike. The laughter didn't fade all at once. It died the way expensive candles burn out slowly, reluctantly, refusing to accept that the room had changed before they did. For a moment, the gala kept pretending. The string quartet tried to recover its rhythm. Servers glided between tables with champagne towers, their smiles stretched thin. But underneath it all, something colder began to coil through the air. Because the black woman in white did not shrink. She didn't avert her eyes. She didn't play the part they had written for her. She simply existed tall, quiet, unbothered, and that alone began to fracture the confidence of the people who had mocked her. The woman in the red gown noticed it first. Her smile faltered, only for a heartbeat, but it cracked, a hairline fracture, the kind that spreads whether you want it to or not. She took a half step back, as if space itself had shifted beneath her heels. Her diamonds trembled slightly, catching the chandelier's glow in uneven flashes. "What's with that look?" she demanded, voice sharper than before, forced. "You're acting like you have a reason to be here." The black woman didn't answer. She raised her chin a fraction, that was all. But the gesture hit harder than a shouted comeback. It unsettled the red-gowned woman in a way she wasn't prepared for. Across the room, a guest whispered, "Who is she?" Another replied, "She looks important." The man in the midnight blue tuxedo, her partner, stood like stone at her side. Not interfering, not shielding, just present. A quiet force that recognized a greater force beside him. The silver-haired man with the wine glass cleared his throat, trying to recover the arrogance slipping from between his fingers. "Don't stare at us like that," he said, lowering his voice but not his ego. "We're the hosts tonight. And you," he stopped. He didn't know how to finish the sentence without revealing everything he truly believed. The room felt it. The quiet contempt, the entitlement, the assumption. But the black woman still didn't respond. Her silence was a verdict. The red-gowned woman tried again, laughing too loudly, waving her friends closer as if gathering an audience would restore her advantage. "Look, everyone," she cooed, gesturing with her wine glass. "She thinks she's above us." But the crowd's laugh came late. Uneven, weak, because in the stillness around her, something profound was emerging, a shift so subtle most couldn't name it, but every instinct in their bodies recognized. Power. Not the kind that needs to be flaunted, the kind that simply is. The quartet's final note quivered, unraveling into silence. Even the chandeliers seemed to dim, their golden halos collapsing inward, as if the room itself were holding its breath. The black woman finally moved. She reached into her clutch, slow, precise, deliberate. Every eye followed. The red-gowned woman stiffened. "What are you doing?" No answer. A soft glow lit the woman's face as she unlocked her phone. Her thumb slid across the screen with a certainty that didn't belong to a guest, or a mistake, or an outsider. It belonged to someone who could end things, someone who had ended things before. The air grew tighter, wrapping around the ballroom like an invisible fist. The crowd didn't know what she was about to do. They only knew one thing. Whatever happened next was going to hurt someone, and it wasn't going to be her. The woman in red swallowed hard, her confidence draining like champagne left too long on ice. "Put the phone down," she said, but her voice broke on the last word. "You're making a scene." The black woman lifted her eyes, calm, cold, measured. "No," she said softly, just one syllable. But it shifted the room's center of gravity. She tapped the screen once. Somewhere outside the ballroom, a phone began to ring. Quiet. Far away, but carrying the weight of everything this night would become. The first domino had fallen. Outside the ballroom, the faint ringing continued, distant, insistent, threading through the quiet spaces of the mansion like a warning the walls themselves understood. Inside, the shift was undeniable. The woman in red watched the black woman's glowing phone like it was a detonator. The silver-haired man stepped closer, as if proximity alone could reclaim his authority. But authority isn't volume. It isn't wealth. It's the room choosing who it listens to. And tonight, the room wasn't listening to them. A few guests tried to return to their conversations, but their voices thinned, their words evaporated. Even the servers slowed their stride, as though afraid any sudden movement might break whatever fragile balance held the night together. Across the ballroom, someone whispered again, "Seriously, who is she?" That question traveled. It spread the way rumor becomes prophecy. The woman in red straightened her shoulders, trying to regain her footing literally and socially. But underneath her diamonds and silk, fear pooled in small, invisible places. She wasn't used to fear. Her name was Vivienne Aldridge, heiress to an old money dynasty whose last 3 generations had never worked a real job, yet owned half the skyline and all the arrogance that came with it. To her, parties like this weren't events, they were territory. Stages where she reminded the world she was born above it. Her husband, Douglas Aldridge, was no different. His family legacy was older than hers, built on steel, railroads, and political favors. Had grown up in a bubble so insulated that accountability felt like fiction. Whatever they lacked in grace, they made up for in assets, at least on paper. Their empire, however, was less stable than their public smiles suggested. The Aldridge fortune was bleeding quietly behind the scenes: bad investments, aging real estate, a failing luxury logistics arm that had been losing clients for years. They weren't ruined yet, but ruin was close enough to taste if they ever dared breathe in too sharply. Tonight was supposed to be their salvation. A new strategic partnership worth $4.9 billion poised to bail out the worst of their debts and elevate their dynasty into a new era. The deal would stabilize everything: their companies, their political influence, their status. But that deal required one thing above all: a signature. One they didn't know was standing right in front of them. The woman they mocked wasn't a +1. She wasn't a mistake at the door. She wasn't someone who wandered in by chance. But the Aldridges didn't know that. Not yet. They only knew their confidence was slipping like water between their fingers. And slipping confidence, in rooms like this, was blood in the ocean. Vivienne reached for her wine, hands trembling just enough to betray her. "This is ridiculous," she hissed to her husband. "She's trying to provoke us." Douglas didn't blink. "Ignore her," he whispered back. "These people bluff when they have nothing." But even he didn't sound convinced. The black woman said nothing. She didn't need to. Her stillness told a story the room felt before it understood. Because stillness like hers wasn't compliance. It was calculation. She had spent years perfecting it, surviving boardrooms that doubted her, industries that underestimated her, markets that tried to outmaneuver her. Every setback had sharpened her. Every insult had become an archive. Every barrier had become blueprint. Her silence wasn't empty. It was full, a reservoir with the pressure of an ocean. Her partner glanced at her, saw the familiar shift behind her eyes, the one that meant a line had been crossed, and there was no path backward from here. Then her phone vibrated once, just once. She looked at the notification, a small line of text. "All teams on standby, awaiting your signal." She didn't smile. Power doesn't need to smile. Across from her, Vivienne Aldridge tried one more time to salvage her image, her voice wobbling between anger and panic. "You're seriously overreacting," she scoffed. "It's a party. Don't make this into something it isn't." The black woman finally looked at her, really looked, a gaze with weight, with history, with truth. "It already is," she said softly. That was when the chandelier flickered. Just once. Enough for every guest to lift their head and wonder if the night had just crossed the threshold between inconvenience and consequence. And deep in the mansion, the ringing phone stopped, not because someone answered it, but because the moment for warnings was over. The chandelier's flicker wasn't enough to panic anyone, but it was enough to remind the room of something they'd forgotten in their arrogance. Power changes the temperature, and the air had just gotten colder. Vivienne Aldridge's expression tightened, a smile welded poorly over fear. She tried to laugh it off, raising her glass as if she could toast away the unease. "All right," she snapped lightly. "Everyone calm down. It's just faulty wiring. This place is old, but the mansion wasn't old, and the wiring wasn't faulty. The only thing malfunctioning was her illusion of control." The black woman in the white gown lowered her phone, her movements slow enough to make every watcher lean in. She didn't speak. She didn't gesture. She simply existed with a calm, so heavy the room felt it like pressure on the chest. Her partner stood beside her, hands loosely at his sides, eyes scanning the Aldridges with the kind of quiet that held warning. Even he didn't know the full extent of what she was about to do, but he knew the signs. Had seen them behind closed doors, in boardrooms where entire companies unraveled at a single decision she made. Vivienne mistook that silence for hesitation. "Look," she said, stepping forward, jewels clinking like tiny threats. "I don't know where you came from, but you don't get to stroll into my event and act superior. You don't have the pedigree to stand here and—" She didn't finish, because the black woman's phone buzzed again. Douglas Aldridge felt the sound more than he heard it. His fingers spasmed around his wine glass. Some ancient instinct, the kind that whispers when a predator enters the clearing, crawled up his spine. "What now?" he muttered, voice cracking. The black woman glanced at the screen. Her face remained unreadable, but something in her shoulders shifted, not tension, not anger, but decision. A quiet, final kind of decision. She slid her thumb across the phone and opened a message thread marked with a single letter, A. Vivienne squinted. "What is that? Who are you texting?" No answer. The black woman typed 3 words. Not loud, not dramatic, just inevitable. "Proceed. Terminate everything." Then she pressed send. The sound was almost nothing, a soft digital click, but somehow the room heard it, or felt it. Like a hinge locking shut on a vault, they didn't know they were trapped inside. Vivienne blinked. "Terminate what?" she demanded. "What did you just do?" The black woman finally raised her eyes, her voice a calm blade. "You'll understand soon." Douglas stepped forward, chest puffed like a man trying to reclaim a throne someone else had already burned. "Listen," he snapped. "I don't know what kind of performance you're putting on, but this is my house, my event, my—" His phone vibrated, once, twice, 3 times. Then it began buzzing continuously, a panicked staccato of alarms from an empire on fire. He stared at the screen, his face blanched. Vivienne leaned over his shoulder, reading the first notification, then the second, then the third. Her breath hitched. What is happening?" she whispered. Around them more phones buzzed. Investors, partners, board members, guests. The hum grew from scattered whispers to a rising, choking swarm of alerts. A man at a nearby table swore under his breath. Another grabbed his wife's arm. Someone else muttered, "Is this real? Did they lose funding?" Vivienne staggered back. No, this can't. But denial is powerless in the face of consequence. The black woman took a single step forward. "Earlier," she said quietly, "you asked who I think I am." Vivienne's eyes snapped upward. The black woman's voice stayed soft, controlled. "I don't think," she said. "I know." No anger, no raised tone. Just truth. And truth didn't need permission to echo. Douglas' phone buzzed again. He didn't check it. He couldn't. Because he already knew with cold, sinking clarity that whatever she had triggered had already reached their world and had started tearing it down. The first scream didn't come from a person. It came from a phone. A sharp digital chirp sliced the air one device, then 3 more, then a chain reaction as alerts began detonating across the ballroom like financial gunfire. The murmurs rose, collided, tangled into confusion. The guests looked around, brows pinched, eyes sharp, faces draining of color one by one. It wasn't normal notification traffic. This was the sound of systems collapsing. Vivienne Aldridge clutched Douglas' arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. "Douglas, check again. This must be a glitch." But his face told the room what his mouth couldn't. There was no glitch. His empire was hemorrhaging in real time. Vivienne yanked her own phone out, tapping with frantic, shaking fingers. The screen refused to comfort her, page after page of urgent alerts, flagged contracts, frozen accounts, revoked privileges. She read the first line aloud without meaning to. Apex Stratos. Immediate suspension of all agreements with Aldridge Holdings. She choked. That's impossible. They can't suspend anything without the words. Died, as her gaze snapped toward the black woman in white. The one person still standing perfectly calm. Vivienne's voice trembled. Without her signature. Across the ballroom, a man in a charcoal suit checked his phone and swore loudly. Another stepped aside, whispering urgently into his earpiece. Someone else muttered, This affects the entire partnership tier. What the hell did they do? The panic was multiplying, the kind that spreads faster than sound. A cluster of board members pushed their chairs back, phones glued to their ears. "Pull the liquidity statement," one barked. "Confirm the bridge loan," another gasped. "Are you seeing these numbers? Tell me this is an error. Tell me we still have equity." But errors don't synchronize across continents. This wasn't chaos. It was precision. The black woman watched the unraveling with a measured stillness, her partner beside her like a shadow forged in steel. She didn't raise a hand, didn't command, didn't gloat. The machinery she had built over decades didn't require theatrics. It required just 3 words, and she had already said them. Proceed. Terminate everything. A wave of security personnel in black suits, not the event's guards, but her people, slipped quietly into the back of the ballroom. They didn't intervene. They didn't speak. They simply observed, verifying identities, confirming protocol, ensuring every step of the dismantling went exactly as planned. Vivienne finally snapped. "You," she stammered, pointing at the woman she had mocked minutes earlier. "What did you do? What authority do you have to?" The black woman met her eyes with the patience of someone who had been underestimated her entire life. Someone who had grown accustomed to people mistaking silence for weakness. "Everything," she answered. Douglas stepped forward, voice cracking like thin ice. "You can't pull funding from a multi-billion-dollar merger with a text message?" She didn't blink. "I didn't text anyone," she said softly. "I texted everyone." Douglas' breath hitched. Her partner spoke for the first time, his voice low, steady. "They've been preparing for this for months. Every legal team, every financial arm, every compliance division. One command triggers the entire cascade. It wasn't bragging, it was explanation. The truth had weight, and the room felt crushed beneath it. A man from the Aldridge board rushed forward, face blotched with panic. "Mrs. Aldridge, our credit line's been severed." Apex pulled out of the refinancing package. They froze the bridge deal. The capital injection, it's gone. All of it. Vivienne staggered. "All? Every cent." The quartet, sensing the moment, fell silent entirely, bows suspended in midair. The black woman didn't move, but the room oriented around her instinctively, as if drawn by gravity itself. Her presence rewrote the hierarchy of the night. Vivienne's voice cracked into a whisper. Why are you doing this?" The black woman tilted her head gently. "You asked who let me in," she said. "You did." Vivienne blinked through tears of shock. I don't understand. You invited me," the woman continued. "Your family requested my presence. You needed my signature to save your dynasty." Douglas' knees nearly buckled. The black woman lowered her phone to her side. "And then," she said quietly, "you taught me exactly what my signature is worth to you. No shouting, no rage, just justice," delivered without raising her voice. The financial storm outside the ballroom raged on, unstoppable. Inside, the Aldridges watched the foundation of their empire split open, all because they mocked the wrong woman. The ballroom no longer sounded like a party. It sounded like a sinking ship, frantic footsteps, broken whispers, the frantic tapping of screens as fortunes evaporated faster than champagne could spill. Vivienne Aldridge stood frozen, her mascara-ed eyes darting between her husband, the board members, and the black woman whose calm presence seemed to rearrange the very oxygen in the room. Phones continued buzzing not randomly but rhythmically. A chorus of consequence. A man near the bar gasped, clutching his phone like it was burning him. "Oh my God," he whispered. "It's trending." He wasn't talking about the financial alerts. He was talking about the video. The one someone recorded the moment Vivienne had pointed a jeweled finger into the black woman's face and spat, "Who the hell let you in here?" The angle caught her laughter, caught Douglas' smirk, caught the entire circle of polished guests enjoying the humiliation. The caption on the viral upload read, "Old money heiress mocks black woman at exclusive gala watch, her confidence collapse." Within minutes, thousands of comments flooded in. Then tens of thousands. The ballroom's massive LED screen flickered as the event's media feed struggled to process the sudden spike in searches involving the Aldridge name. Vivienne's hands trembled violently. No, someone take that down, take it down right now." But the internet is not a chandelier you can just switch off. Once the spark catches, the room doesn't decide what burns. A server hurried past her, phone in hand, whispering to a colleague. People are pulling out of Aldridge Holdings left and right. Stock futures crashed 26% in 8 minutes. Douglas heard it, and something inside him cracked. He staggered backward until he collided with the edge of the dessert table, a tower of crystal dishes trembling dangerously behind him. He looked smaller now, not in stature but in consequence. Across the floor, investors who had once clung to the Aldridge name like a shield now stepped away, putting physical space between themselves and the impending ruin. Room dynamics shift quickly when the powerful lose their glow. A senator's wife, wrapped in silver silk, whispered to her husband, "We can't be seen with them tonight." He didn't argue. He simply nodded. The room was turning not out of morality, but out of survival. One board member approached Vivienne, breathless. "We tried calling Apex's CFO. They won't answer." They issued a statement. "They're severing ties immediately." Vivienne shook her head like a child refusing bad news. "That's impossible. They need us. They need our branding." "They don't," he said softly. "Not anymore." Another alert appeared on Vivienne's screen, then another, then another. A dozen companies pulling away. A dozen doors slamming shut. A dynasty collapsing in real time. It wasn't just the financial empire breaking. It was the illusion of untouchability. Meanwhile, the black woman remained exactly where she had been, still, centered, immovable. The eye of the storm she had chosen not to escape. Her partner leaned slightly toward her. "You're sure?" he asked quietly. She nodded once. "Very." The string quartet attempted a soft piece to ease the tension, but the first violinist's hands were trembling too badly. The notes came out jagged, discordant, a soundtrack for the dying heartbeat of the Aldridge legacy. Someone near the stage shouted, "They're calling this the biggest mid-event withdrawal in corporate history." Vivienne's breath turned shallow, her chest tightened. "This can't be real," she whispered. It was one comment, one moment. She can't destroy everything over. The black woman's gaze met hers across the room. It was calm, measured, not triumphant, simply true. Actions have weight. Words have consequences. Some lessons demand an audience. Vivienne stumbled forward. "Please," she said, voice splintering. "Undo it. Tell them to stop. We can fix this. Well, apologize publicly." "Well, but apologies born from desperation are different from apologies born from remorse." Everyone in the room knew which kind Vivienne was offering. A final tremor rippled through the crowd as the ballroom's giant screens refreshed with a new headline. Aldridge Holdings loses. $1. 3B in under 12 minutes. Analysts predict total collapse. Someone screamed. Someone fainted. Someone else muttered, "This is over." And standing in her white gown, untouched, unshaken, the woman they tried to humiliate simply watched the empire fall. Not with vengeance, with clarity. For the first time all night, the Aldridge ballroom felt small. Not in size, the ceiling still stretched like the inside of a cathedral. Chandeliers still poured gold across the marble, but in power. Whatever grandeur the space once held, now pressed down on Vivienne and Douglas like a collapsing sky. Douglas stared at his phone, face ashen, lips parted but unable to form a sound. His hands, once steady from years of wielding influence, now trembled uncontrollably. Vivienne wasn't trembling. She was unraveling. Her posture wilted. Her breath came in sharp, broken pulls, and the diamonds on her neck seemed to tighten like a noose with every headline flashing across her screen. She looked at the black woman, really looked for the first time, without the armor of arrogance. "You," she whispered, voice hollow. "You were the investor. The partner. The signature we needed." The black woman didn't nod, didn't confirm, didn't soothe. The truth sat in her stillness. Douglas swallowed hard, his voice cracking. All those negotiations, the meetings, the projections, the terms. "You had final authority." A whisper spread through the guests. "Shay's the one. She owns the parent company. She's the controlling shareholder." The realization hit harder than any financial alert. Vivienne stumbled toward her, hands extended like someone trying to grab onto the last piece of a sinking ship. Why didn't you tell us who you were? She demanded, desperation sharpening her tone. Why would you let us talk to you like the black woman's gaze didn't waver? You weren't talking to who I was, she said softly. You were talking to who you thought I was. Vivienne froze. Those words carried centuries. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Regret, humiliation, disbelief. They collided inside her until only silence remained, a silence that felt like judgment. Douglas tried again, voice small. Look, we were hosting a large event. Things get chaotic. Maybe we misunderstood. Maybe it didn't happen the way it looked on camera. The black woman blinked once, slowly. Is that the story you want to tell? His mouth snapped shut, because everyone in that ballroom had heard it. Everyone had seen it. The red-gowned heiress pointing down at a black woman like she was an intruder in a world meant only for the privileged. A moment so casual to the Aldridges, but so catastrophic to the people watching. Vivienne clutched her husband's sleeve. Douglas, say something. Fix this. Fix this. As if the problem was a PR mistake. As if the fallout was a branding inconvenience. As if the consequences weren't earned. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. He just stared at the woman they had mocked, finally understanding what kind of force stood before him. A force with the resources to dismantle empires, and the dignity to do it quietly. A force that had given them every opportunity to treat her like a human being, and had been answered with cruelty. Vivienne took a step closer, tears streaking down her perfect makeup. Please, she whispered, tell us what you want. The black woman held her gaze, calm and unwavering. What I wanted was respect, she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was truth, delivered like a verdict, and you decided that was too expensive. A hush swept the ballroom. Somewhere behind them, another wave of alerts pinged the final signatures of a dying empire. Vivienne's knees buckled. Douglas caught her, but barely. And in that moment, they finally understood. The woman they tried to belittle was the only person who could have saved them. But respect isn't retroactive, and justice doesn't negotiate. The room gathered around her without instruction. Attention has gravity, and tonight she was the center of it. Vivienne stood trembling, mascara streaking down her cheeks, her breath thin enough to break. Douglas hovered behind her, pale, hollow, a man who finally understood the cost of underestimating the wrong person. The black woman in white stepped forward only half a pace enough for the room to feel it, not enough to appear theatrical. Her posture was straight, unforced, the elegance of someone who never needed to raise her voice to be heard. When she spoke, her words carried like a soft blade. I don't believe in vengeance, she said, and I don't believe in humiliation, even when it's given freely. A ripple moved through the crowd. I believe in accountability, she continued, eyes fixed on Vivienne. Because respect is not a courtesy, it's the minimum. And tonight, you chose to forget that. Vivienne opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The woman in white didn't look away. You asked why I didn't announce who I was, she said. Because the way someone treats a stranger tells me far more than the way they treat a partner. Silence settled again, heavier than any music the quartet could have played. Then she added, softly but unmistakably, Your empire didn't fall tonight because of me. It fell because it was built on the assumption that people like me don't belong. A single tear escaped down Vivienne's face. The black woman stepped back, letting the words anchor themselves in the marble and gold. Now, she said, voice calm, final. The world knows who you are, and so do you. And with that, the room exhaled not in relief, but in reckoning. By the time the quartet attempted to play again, half the room had abandoned their seats. Investors slipped out with stiff collars and lowered eyes, board members made frantic calls in hallways, and the Aldridge name, once a crown, now hung in the air like smoke from a burned-out match. The black woman didn't watch them scatter. She didn't need to. Her partner draped a hand gently at the small of her back, guiding her toward the exit with quiet understanding. As they walked, servers stepped aside, not out of fear but out of recognition. Respect, finally given where it had been denied. Outside, the night air was cool, steady, unbothered by the chaos unfolding behind them. A black sedan waited at the curb. As the driver opened the door, her phone buzzed one final time. A message from her CFO. Deal officially terminated. Funds retracted. Exposure neutralized. Full control restored. She typed nothing back. Her silence was answer enough. Before entering the car, she looked up at the mansion, a monument to inherited power now trembling under the weight of its own arrogance. Light flickered behind the ballroom windows, silhouettes pacing, collapsing, pleading. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. Justice doesn't need applause. She stepped into the car. The door closed softly, the gentlest ending to a night that had redrawn an empire. As the sedan pulled away, the mansion shrank in the rear window, becoming nothing more than a lesson carved in marble and memory. And somewhere inside, Vivienne Aldridge finally understood. The most dangerous person in the room is the one who never had to shout.